Hello and welcome to a special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. And today my guest is Peter Lavelle, host of Crosstalk on RT. Peter, thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. My first time in Beijing, and it's been a wonderful visit so far.
Great, I'm happy to hear that. Coming from Russia and to Beijing for the first time, what do you find is the biggest difference and biggest similarity, including to CGTN?
Well, a lot of surprises, I have to say. Having never been here, I have to rely upon other sources about what it's like here. Far more modern, far more busy than I could have ever expected, far more polite. Going in the underground, having problems with those cards, people coming up trying to show me how to use it. Seeing your television station has been a really eye-opening experience. I mean, it's a very extensive, very ambitious, which I think is good, and reaching out to the world. And I think that's exactly what we both have in common.
Exactly.
Because I put us both into the category right now of alternative media, which I think is a good niche to be in because it's the niche that's growing.
It's very interesting you say alternative media, but basically for China's population or for the BRICS population, we are not alternative. We are not the minority, right? We should be there and, you know, boldly.
Well, this is the problem, and this is this paradigm shift that we're going through, and it may be a 20-year thing, it may be a generational thing, because so many of the most effective, powerful media assets in the world are in the West. And the world mediates its understanding of the rest of the world. It goes through America, and then it comes out again.
Yeah.
And this is something. It's a very slow process. It's a very expensive process. We have to be aware of. But it's beginning to happen because the confidence that in the West, the confidence of media is disintegrating. It's falling apart because we see so many media outlets that are openly politically partisan, and this is showing the divisions. There's huge divisions in Europe right now. There's huge divisions in America as well. And in the past, it was the media doing their job as journalists, is reporting upon that, but they're part of this crisis of confidence that's going on right now because they openly side with the powers that be. This is creating a lot of tension, and it actually creates an opening for your television station and the television station that I work for, because people want to say what else can be heard, because the media is so monolithic.
Yeah.
People intuitively understand there's something wrong with it.
Basically, traditionally for a member of the audience in America, for instance, if they want to know about Russia, if they want to know about China, it will be through their own media.
Right.
And it's basically something, it's a mirror, right? Basically something reflecting what they have been used to hearing and what they would like to hear, and when they hear it, it's never inconvenient. But when it comes to our TV station, it's just uncomfortable, I think. And you are particularly strong in giving them that kind of discomfort. What do you believe in, in doing all of that?
Well, originally when RT went on air, we called ourselves Russia Today, and our primary mission was to explain Russia to the world because it wasn't understood very well. And this is particularly, this is a short time after the end of the Cold War, which the Cold War really kind of crystallized the view of Russia in Western minds. It was very rigid, very solid, very difficult to change.
For a certain degree, however, it reflected kind of the state of things back then.
Well, it did. And what we were trying to do was saying that was a long time ago. We don't deny that kind of past. But there's a new reality right now and a new world order right now where Russia's place is in the world vis-a-vis the West, the East, and the South. Not always, the reference is not always the West, and that's something we're trying to get away from because the world is so much more complex. But
so you started by trying to explain.
Well, trying to explain, and then basically, and I think, my program Crosstalk is essentially, I'll tell you how I actually see it now. It is basically a critique of Western narratives about themselves and everyone else in the world. And so we look at a lot of how to explain what happened after the financial crisis of 2008. And then we have to get, we look at the Arab Spring, which I call the Sunni winter, Because, and that's a discursive difference. If I say the other term, it means something very different. You won't hear that in Western media because it's a very monolithic view of what the Middle East means, what Islam means, what
democratic revolution,
right, and what democracy means in the Middle East or doesn't mean in the Middle East, and then. The two major stories that put RT on the map and my program Crosstalk was the events that happened in Ukraine and Syria. And I'm very happy that a lot of people not only wanted to come and watch the program, but people were asking to come on my program because they said it is so monolithically wrong that what is being reported on the cable stations and on the major broadsheets, that this is simply outrageous, and that was a breakthrough for us.
Yeah, but you said you started by trying to explain the Russia's story, but what didn't work? I think right now what you're trying to do is more than just explain the Russia perspective, but really going all the way, out and
right, and going to the core of Western narratives. Why didn't it work? I was trained as an academic historian in Eastern Europe and in Russia, so I know these histories pretty well. And so if someone is trying to put a historical event into context in the present, I could understand that because I understand the history. Western audiences are not educated in that, and so it's very difficult to get over that. So. Because there was no context. There's no context to understand something. So, if you have no context to understand a story, and you flip on the station, you might think, what is this, propaganda? That's the problem.
Maybe also too much information.
Yeah, and too much information. I'm sure you've also come across that also. Because, when on my program, and I've always encouraged my colleagues at RT, is let's make our reference point international law. Because that's something that should apply to everyone, particularly if a country has signed up to it. So when talking about Syria, for example, well, the United States has sent military forces and equipment and support illegally under international law. That is a gross violation. Nowhere, BBC, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, no one ever mentions that. That is... But see, that's an issue that applies to everyone universally. But the West itself doesn't see that it's applicable to them, only to everyone else.
They're looking at the Russian intervention.
But it was legal under international law. The sovereign government of Damascus invoked external assistance. It is part of the UN Charter.
That is the thing, because also for a long time the United States has broken such international convention and law so many times that strangely over the long run people start to think that that is the way it should be, whereas it absolutely should not be. And I think it is TV channels like yours or TV channel like ours to point out the ridicule in there. That's
giving context to a story, and that is one element that can create context that we can all understand, that we have treaties and all countries should be treated equally. But when China is criticized or Russia is criticized for breaking international law, I mean, people like ourselves to say, oh, you can't be serious, you can't be serious accusing us of breaking international law when it is a frequent occurrence on the part of the U.S. and its Western allies.
Exactly. A story that we also talk about a lot is the South China Sea issue. And the moment a lot of people in the West talk about it, they say, look, China does not want to participate in this tribunal, China does not accept its award, that means China does not accept international law. So it's a very simplistic, black and white approach.
But in the same tribunals and the same treaties, the United States is not even a member of.
Yeah.
How can it possibly criticize other partners in a legal agreement when itself is not part of that legal agreement? That is never mentioned as well.
Yeah, that is the kind of fact that we want to put forward. That is the kind of. But however, looking at your program, some people are saying that Peter, what you say might be right, but you have taken a kind of attitude of demonizing the other side to make yourself look right and sound right. How do you counter that?
I wouldn't say demonizing. I mean, I can return the same kind of tone and tenor as it is directed towards me. If you want to be nasty, I can be nasty too, okay? I mean, and that's unfortunately part of a certain element of media today, particularly television. I mean, let's not deny it. I mean, a political program like mine, there's an element of politainment, politics and entertainment. I'm sorry, but it's true. I admit it, okay? I mean, this is a way to attract viewers. I mean, viewers are attracted to personalities, television personalities. Look at CNN and Fox TV. They all, what do? They only promote their anchors and their presenters. That's how they present themselves. I'm kind of tearing a page from it. I have my own style. I have my own opinions that I am very open about. When people come on my program, they know where I stand. But this demonization, I'm tired of being demonized. I'm tired of countries being demonized by the West when they think that they're morally higher and morally better than the rest of the world. I think it's very fair to say, and if we look at least the last 25 years, who has started most of the wars around the world, okay? And I think we all know where those, the perpetrators are. They're in Western capitals.
Yeah, but talking about this style, however, people still say it's too combative, it's too you know, confrontational, that in the end, it drives to polarize the audience. I mean,
we're already polarized. We're already polarized. It's not making it worse. It's actually showing a reflection of reality. No, what I really begrudge, if I can use an American example, you have CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. Different variations of, you know, from left to right. But when it comes to foreign policy, they're all neoconservative. This angers me a lot, okay? I don't like this monolithic view. And so what I try to show our audience is that there are very distinct differences here, and there are issues of what's morally right and what's morally wrong, what is legal and what is illegal. And if that kind of style can flesh that out. I mean, having three guys with gray hair sipping tea, you know, it's not going to really kind of flesh out the kind of real divisions, real polarizations that truly exist.
Okay, we're going to take a very short break, and you have been watching The Point on CGTN with me, Liu Xin. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, and I've been talking to Peter Lavelle, host of the program Crosstalk on RT, and thank you again for joining us, Peter. I was talking about the potential polarizing of audiences as a result of our programs. My understanding is, okay, there are people who would agree with us, but these are the people that agree with us, and there are the people who are against our opinion, and probably by coming to them very strongly in a very confrontational manner, we are going to drive them even further. What I would like to do, I don't know whether it is effective or whether it is right, is to reach out to the broadest base of audience as possible, so that, you know, slowly, bit by bit, people wouldn't say, okay, she probably is right, I'm not sure, but let me watch her a little bit more. How do you look at that?
I don't know if we're there now. I think this polarization is only going to get worse. I think it's a sad comment, I'll say, about our industry. I'll be very blunt with you, I always am. People watch cable networks to hear what they want to hear. I think that's really the case. I think is what people, if they love or hate Fox in America, they came up with the idea that was pretty lucrative. They make a lot of money off of it. But their audience are people that are already converted. MSNBC, they are already converted. CNN is losing it slowly but surely because they play this artificial neutrality, which they're not, okay? And their competitor, MSNBC, is true liberal, progressive. And I actually have I'm a conservative, but I have a lot more respect for MSNBC because they show their colors. So does Fox, okay? We're in this media environment now where people are trying to have their own views, worries, expectations may be reinforced right now. And that's why I would tend to agree with you that, you know, we need to go a step further. And that's why I do try to be as extremely fact-driven as I possibly can. And because a lot of people make so many factual mistakes. I have people coming on my program that talk about Russia, for example, and I feel bad for them because they stumble on really kind of very simple things, but it's not particularly their fault because they read the Washington Post or the New York Times. And I, I have had to correct them and say, but no, the fact is this. I mean, the fact that it's easy to find. I mean, it's not, obscure or anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, being kind of hard about that, I'm going to draw the line. I'm going to keep you correct, because that's what my viewers expect from me. But I think people want hard views right now, because I think people feel very, very frustrated. Not just in the West, but around the world. We're going through an amazing transition right now, and I don't know if the transition is a good one. Okay, it remains to be seen.
Where do you think the world is going? I mean, given the kind of confusion we are seeing almost on every front, on trade, isolationism, globalization, two totally different ideas pulling at each other. What is driving all of this? In the United States,
I think that Trump is a symptom of what's going on.
Yes,
okay? It's
but
symptom.
What is going on really?
If he is even, if he leaves office before his term is up or is not re-elected in 2020, there's a certain direction that has happened there. It is, and I would say it's primarily because of globalization. The middle class, this is the people I care most about. The rich will always take care of themselves. The poor need our assistance when necessary, but it's the middle class that are the shakers and movers. And that's changing very radically in the West. That's why you see so many political divisions in Europe. That's why Brexit happened. Going back to very basic modern ideas, I hate postmodernism. Postmodernism, no borders, okay? No sovereignty.
No, that's not going to...
I'm okay, you're okay, every cultural idea is equal to one another. It's not true, okay? You have to have a sense of identity, and identity in the West is being dissolved. And this is creating enormous anxiety. Plus with the globalization on steroids. Okay, China I have a lot of respect for, because it says, no, we accept many modern forms of life and thinking, but we keep our sovereignty,
yes.
We keep our identity, we respect our culture. These are modern ideas, not postmodern ideas. And the West has gone way too far with postmodernism, and it's created a lot of anxiety. Russia, for example, a communist country for 70 years. Every single year, more and more people go to church. It's going up. In the West, it's secularism. And as a matter of fact, religious belief is frowned upon if it's Christian. And don't say anything bad about Muslims. This political correctness is paralyzing people, okay? That doesn't mean you shouldn't be respectful and people should all be treated equally under the law. But if you look like what's going on in the United States right now, the Civil War monuments, now they're putting burqas on them. What when I heard that, I couldn't believe it. What's going on?
Yeah.
Okay? Not destroying your history. That's wrong. You have to understand your history, even if it's painful.
And maybe as a reflection, Russia has become so much of a talking point in the U.S. media. How do you look at all of that?
If it was like a 10-step program, I can't come up with that right now. But at first I thought, what? This is simply not possible. And then bewilderment, and then anger, and then the last 6 months is like, oh, you can't be serious now.
But they're discussing it with real earnest.
It's a domestic issue. It's a domestic political issue, and it has extreme international ramifications. And I think it is so irresponsible of the American political elites and the media to use the RussiaGate, Russia conspiracy, collusion story to mediate their own political differences at home, because it is, I would say, unfortunately, it has put off U.S.-Russia relations being improved for a generation. But one thing Western audiences need to understand, because Western elites don't seem to get it, is that Russia is not isolated in the world. It has lots of opportunities. The relationship between Russia and China is only getting better, and it's accelerating.
I think that is a very important factor there. The reason why a lot of the media in the United States talk so much about this Russia-phobia, RussiaGate, is precisely because the ordinary people on the streets, their understanding about Russia is still 20 years old, 30 years old, and they think Russia, okay, vodka, and then
bears.
Yeah, bears, or the leaders during the Soviet era, and that's all they know about Russia.
Yeah.
I think a very important thing that we have to counter in our daily job is really to open up the vision, the horizon of the Western audience so that they understand. Maybe they do not agree with us, but they understand that there are so many countries out there which have a lot of story, a lot of things they do not understand.
The problem is that the West has created a mythology about itself. It's messianic, that it has to save the world. And so let's take two important countries, your country and the country that I live in, Russia. China has gone its own trajectory. But it wasn't supposed to go that way. It was supposed to go, a democratic revolution, privatization, emancipation, all the other isms, okay? Because this is the trajectory that the West sees progress for the world. And China has said, no, we have a different road. And Russia is saying, we have a very different road. Because, Russia borders on Europe, and as much as Russia is blamed for meddling in Europe, we in Russia just stand on the sidelines like, watch them tear themselves to pieces. And we don't have to lift a finger. I mean, this is really the biggest irony of it all, is that, all you do is stand by and watch this. I mean, it is really, I was a trained historian, and, I couldn't write a historical novel about what we're seeing, what's happening in the United States and in Europe, because it would seem unthinkable, because it's so destructive in so many ways.
And so detached from reality.
Detached from reality. And you know what? There's a saying, and I think every culture comes up with a similar version of it. The caravan, the dogs bark, but the caravan passes. And I think that's how we feel outside of the Western world. The dogs are barking, but we in the caravan, we're going to keep moving on because we do see a future. Okay.
Another thing I think is what the Western media does, and I think is to the damage of the Western audience and the Western world in general, is the consequence of ignorance among their audience. And I think, sometimes when I see a Western report about China, I say, if this is what Western journalists are feeding to their domestic audience over the years, you won't see the van.
You're absolutely right. When I read story, Bloomberg, I think it was a week, 10 days ago, they had this really amazing story about Moscow's architectural progress, because the FIFA, the World Cup, is coming to Moscow soon, and there's really a lot being done in Moscow. It looks really beautiful right now, and whoever's writing the architectural part of the article knows what they're talking about, because I live in that city. And then it's peppered in with these political paragraphs. And I was like, what is this doing here? Because it, first of all, has no place in the article. And what it is it is just a diversion. And it goes through all of Russia's quote-unquote sins. And then, meanwhile, look at the new stadium. And I just think, who wrote this? I mean, this is really hard. Because because Russia is anchored in this kind of a political context that they keep reminding people about. The number of stories, and we don't have time for it, that allegations or accusations, and we follow up on them, and you just say, but there's no evidence whatsoever to base up this story. But that was 5 news cycles ago. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and the thing is, for these journalists back home, they also have to cater to a certain appetite and a certain political or media correctness, let's say. If they do not put these paragraphs in there, these stories would consider to be too... Why are you praising Russian architects?
You've gone native. That's what they say. I will give you an example of an international journalist that worked for a major cable station. I won't mention it. He was British, and he was living in Russia. He wasn't working for RT, another cable station, and he was moved on because they said, you've gone native, meaning you've gone soft. Because the more you learn about it, a country where you live, the more nuanced your opinion. That's common sense, isn't it? It's common sense. But no, he was moving away from the major tenets, Russia is aggressive, Russia is unreliable, Russia is arrogant, all these things there. And the longer you say in a country, the more you think, well, it's not even remotely close to what these tenets dictate. And I think this is a real problem for journalism, because I know journalists, I say, why did you write that? Well, my editor, back in Washington, back in New York, What about that headline? The headline has nothing to do with the article.
That's what sells.
Yeah. Exactly.
But Peter, again, I think we here, as much as we have accomplished so far in our different missions, in our different styles, what still keeps you thinking?
You know, I believe in journalism, and I believe that it has a mission. I'll betray my age more or less now, but I was a little boy when the war in Vietnam was coming to an end, when America lost in Indochina. And it was the media that played a key role in informing the American people that war was wrong, it was immoral, and there was no national interest there whatsoever. They were heroes. And then there was the Watergate scandal, where the heroes of the Watergate scandal were journalists.
Yeah.
Then there was Iran-Contra. Robert Perry, one of the great journalists of our time, he writes for consortiumnews.com. He exposed that. And these are heroes to me. I see no heroes out there right now because they're working with the bad guys. They're working for power and to protect power. And journalism has to come out of that dangerous sleepwalking lull. And I know a lot of people that are very passionate about telling true stories, the truth. And that's really the essence of Crosstalk. They come to me now. I don't have to look for them. They come to me now. They want to tell their stories. That's what keeps me going.
Thank you very much, Peter Lavelle, host of Crosstalk on RT. And that was it for this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, here on CGTN. As always, follow us on Twitter or Facebook using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application of CGTN Live to watch our programs on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. That's it. Thank you for watching. You've got The Point.